athletics. Okay, so we're talking about frequencies. This is another one that we've been talking about. Actually, I think when we were still 2020, I think is when we first started talking about integrating frequencies. Hey, Don,
yeah.
Could you take that X up?
Yep.
Yeah. Can everyone hear me okay? I've changed sides of the room. Can you hear online? Somebody?
Loud and clear.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah,
Much better.
Yeah,
Much
loud
better.
and clear.
Awesome. All right, so this is our current business practice and workflow of frequencies. So currently, the end user will type in their frequencies, their transmit, their receive, their respective tones, except for in CAL FIRE, I have to call them out because they're already integrating. But in our other national CAD like WildCAD and IROC, the user has the ability to enter frequencies in. They no longer can actually do it in the application, correct? They no longer have to go through org maintenance in IROC. I'm asking the question.
What's the question?
That they can actually, because I've practiced over the weekend, you can actually go right in and frequencies, add my own frequency, etc. So there's been some, and the other thing is frequencies are housed under the catalog or resource kind of aircraft, and which is interesting, right? So we've got our frequencies and our aviation mixed together. So you can see in IROC, if we were to need to add a new frequency, say we ran out in the summer, which happens all the time, and the communications division, NICD, gets them from the post office or the FAA or whoever they get from, they can manually go in and add them, and then fill a request from a local unit who's run out of their frequencies. The other piece, so we've got those that are assigned, and then they have, and I mean assigned by NICD. Then we have the other data set of frequencies that each unit, and usually it's by dispatch center, have a list of their local frequencies. So these are their mountaintop repeaters. These are their county and local government repeaters, county and local simplex, etc. Tactical. So we've got them broken down by use, which is, I'm not going to go through. Command, tactical. Each one of these systems have a different way of handling them. For example, in WildCAD, the user can say, well, this is an aviation frequency. So they didn't put it in as air to ground. They didn't put it in as air to air. They just put it in as aviation. So that we're kind of all over the map as to how we have our frequencies entered into the system. So if I was a dispatcher and I got a fire, I went into WildCAD and I would say, okay, these are the frequencies that I'm going to assign, and then I manage my fire. The incident itself goes into Irwin and makes its way into IROC. As a dispatcher, now I have to go in and choose the frequencies again there. And those get put in the header data. So if you close your eyes and you picture the resource order form up at the top where it talks about frequencies, those are those. They don't have a resource order. They're just part of the incident data at that point. This has been another big part of the conversation. Should they actually be resources, or should they be header data the way that we've traditionally used them? So we don't have a lot of governance. We don't have any governance on them. People can just do whatever they want. Sorry.
Yeah, just whatever, roll around.
Dispatch manager role can enter. Okay, so I think I covered all of those. So that's our current workflow, and I think by what I just said, you might have had some red flags like, oh, we should probably look into this and how we can do this better. So what we're talking about doing this. And so what we're trying to solve for, that first thing up there on the top right, they've identified a business need to integrate the radio frequencies utilized on wildland fire incidents. It would ensure our data quality and standards back and forth of the CUI. I tend to invert that, so apologies if I do that. Frequency within the enterprise suite of applications towards efficiencies, continuity of integration or interagency incident management, and to that end, we're seeking to develop a consolidated database. So part of the conversation is, do we create a new catalog, or as we call it, catalog is in IROC, and the standard for the resources right now is resource kind. Currently, we have aviation, cruise, overhead, equipment, and supplies, and adding a frequency. So that's part of the conversation, number one. And then second, if we can put this information into Edge as a reference data set, and then the systems could read from Edge as the reference data set and allocate those frequencies. So for example, if I was a dispatcher sitting in Northern Utah Dispatch in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I had an incident, I would be presented with, these are your frequencies that are tactical. These are your frequencies that are air-to-air. These are your frequencies that are air-to-ground. I can pick them and move on. And then those frequencies would be shared over to any system that has a need for frequencies. So that's what we're trying to do. A lot of this stuff in here is what you already know as far as Edge is what it does. This presentation is for folks who might not be as familiar with Edge as y'all are. But you can see down at the bottom, it would go into Irwin, and then it would be made available to the CADs and IROC. Go ahead. Okay. So the next thing we have is this one. It's pretty good, probably.
No, this one's,
Timeline.
yeah, this one's more of a movie than a documentary, point of phrase. That's great, Cloud.
So here is just a rough start of a timeline for what this is going to look like. So Lauren and myself have been working on pulling the data via a data call. So all of those frequencies that are out there that the nation's been using, there's nowhere anywhere. It's on FTP sites. It is in a PDF. It's just nowhere that is common as far as everywhere goes. And so she's gone by each geographic area. Well, first thing we did is created a standard, right? And so the standard's out there, reviewed and approved. Nice. Posted and available, and we use that standard to gather the data. So now we have a data set, and we've been gradually uploading it into Edge. Currently, Irwin is serving as this interim host for the CAL FIRE data until we were able to get it stood up in Edge and available in Edge. So then now the systems would be able to, the end goal is the systems would be able to query the service coming out of Edge and do the exact same thing, present the information to each center based on, say we created the incident in IROC rather than a CAD, that they could have those available. The other big piece is developing workflows for, historically we've gone into these systems to do it. Who are our super users? The Kim Albrechts of the world, the CDOs. They need to be able to go directly into Edge, be presented with the information like, what do you want for your transmit? What do you want for your receive? So she can manually type it in, or whomever is the CDO for the day can type it in as they get that information from the FAA. This would be in the case, say that it's not already in our inventory. They need to add more, and they've requested new frequencies because we've run out. They would be able to manually add that in. Then we've also engaged a group of agency frequency managers across the nation for those local frequencies as they get updated year to year, so they could go in and make those kinds of updates. So that's the governance process, that they would, only those identified users would be able to go in and do that. The questions I think that are still on the table is, how often is it going to be updated? If, for example, CDO went in, updated this data, and needs to use it right now, will the service be instant? And will the systems read them instantaneously? Will there be a way within Edge that we can say, push this now, not wait for a nightly cycle? Because I think we've all identified that changes are fairly rare. So the need to do this constantly is situationally dependent, right?
Yeah, the data call that we've done, that we've been collecting, that's static data. For the most part, you're not going to be going up there and changing the frequency on your computer.
That still hasn't changed.
That's static. So we collected. There may be a few updates.
That's the NIFC federal one?
No, that's the local. That's another one that's the local that are fairly static. And the NIFC, I think, are fairly static as well until they run out.
Yeah.
And then when they request new, sometimes they give them the same one, sometimes it's brand new.
Yeah.
So you've got the NIFC ones in your collection.
Yeah.
Federal, the fire pack ones.
Yep.
But the ones that are potentially assigned by NICD, that's kind of transitional data, because those frequencies are going to be active for that fire, but only that fire, and they borrowed it from somewhere else, and they may have
To give it back.
access to it for a time frame, or they may have to give it back immediately on release.
Which is another key P. We need to be able to make them active and inactive. Gabriella, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, and sometimes you BLM ones, if you're in that area.
Yeah.
Borrow.
Well, not usually by the BLMs but I always use that as a reference because it's so weird to me that those are the ones that are sharing.
Yeah, they go to the FAA, and then there's someplace else that they go that they can get frequencies, but these frequencies are issued to tons of other government entities, and that's their job, not my job. My job is take frequency, put in database.
Yeah. So the expectation, again, I kind of borrowing from what Rochelle said on the last conversation piece is we're putting timelines on a calendar to be like, hey, we're trying to get to this piece. I've had some conversations with Wildcat about what their thoughts are, how they can maybe handle it, an old table, a new table. Definitely support the project, and Big IROC is just starting to consider. I don't want to speak for them.
This. When we have.
Yeah, when you have something to go to.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think this one it's a little bit more clean. I think the challenge, of course, has been the concept of that it's more sensitive data and using the service. I think it was a great test case for us to work with the Edge team to make that happen. I think Irwin has learned a ton over the last year working with CAL FIRE and doing this. For example, I wish they were here, but I'll speak for them anyway. But so CAL FIRE can actually, if they've got bleed over, they can actually say, well, let's change the tone by one. And the rest of us were issued a frequency, and that's what it is. If we have bleed over, we report back up to the CDO, we have to have bleed over, and they give us a new one. They can actually make it. So they have done a table where I think there's 32 options of frequencies for each transmit and receive. Nationally, we only use 16, but to make that table, make it easier for the data entry within Edge to acknowledge, okay, well, here's your 16 options, or here's your 32 options, rather than the user having to do it 16 or 32 times. So I'd love to share that with you, is how Chris handled it, because something that he's pretty proud of how I think he was able to accomplish. Yeah, for sure.
The other kind of fuzzy part of this process is the maintenance of that data and working with radio groups to identify who that individual will be. I don't know yet.
I don't think it's gonna be an individual. So when we met with them this spring, we asked for a task group, whether that task group was 5 people, every year 10, one for each geographic area, whatever, and that we sort of rotate through to manage that. It's a big ask, right? It's a big ask. They're doing it anyway. Somewhere else. It would just be a different spot, and it shouldn't be one person. And probably about time to meet with them again and just say, hey, look, we're getting closer from what we shared with you last spring. And do we have any volunteers? I don't think that Kim's got a group of folks that everyone is busy, but working with her as well, just to see what her thoughts are. She's been really helpful with questions and business cases, et cetera.
So process.
And again, Kim has been managing a lot of this data in an Excel spreadsheet. And, multiple roles for the same frequency because there's different attributes. So we are trying to help kind of clean that up for her and those folks in that CDO role as well. So Julie had a question.
Jules.
I'm going to show you.
Is it on the 9? I haven't looked to see there on the frequency piece, Julie.
Yeah, when we were talking about this internally with IROC last week, Elizabeth had noticed that there's not request statuses or resource statuses tied to that frequency stuff. And there probably should be for the NICD
Yeah,
frequencies that are getting ordered.
yeah, I'd have to look at the V9 and double check for you, but I think we should definitely look at it for sure. And I think that's where it's like Mary keeps me in line on this kind of stuff pretty well, because we don't need one. She's like, well, why? And we do for the NICD for sure. Well, why don't we? Why don't we? Now there's some business workflows in place, especially with certain areas of the country. For example, when they do their meat board, they automatically assign A1, A2, A3, A4, air attack, seats, etc., before they even go into IROC. And so I think it's just going to be a matter of if we're going to start including frequencies as far folks need to know. The way I always look at it is A numbers are free or F numbers are free. What difference does it make? And it probably makes sense, Julie, to treat them all the same early on, kind of like what you're saying, instead of just think about them as the NICDs, but do them with the local units as well.
Probably need to look at it, yeah.
Okay.
Really?
Thanks, everybody.
Jill, do you want to do the acronyms and then we'll?
Access. The editor one or the public one? Tell me which one should be access.
You want, that's where she's at, right?
I sent you 2 of them there in your email.
Oh, in my email.
So
They sent something this morning.
Bear with us, folks. For those that don't know me, my name is Jill Kuenzi, and I work out of Kuenzi. For those of you, most of you know me. But I am with the Forest Service, and this morning my teams, like many other folks' teams, are not working quite right. So that's why I sent the link to Don, and he's going to pull it out for me.
Okay. Nope.
Perfect. Perfect. Excellent. Thanks, Don. Yeah. So for those that are online, I shared a link out yesterday to the public acronym list. You heard me talking about this at sessions past, but just wanted to let you know that we are up over 800 acronyms that we have collected. Some of them are duplicates, some of them are not, but we continue to add acronyms to this list continuously, especially as more of you create new projects and continue to create acronyms as that goes. So if you would, over on the left-hand side, can you search for AWS? And you guys are online are not quite seeing exactly all the colors that show up on the screens when we see it on our own computers. So just be advised that we do have several acronyms that have multiple definitions and meanings. An example would be AWS, and you can see that now we are showing multiple entries in here with definitions where available when the information was listed. So we'll continue as life goes on to continue putting acronyms into this list, and hopefully this will be of help to you. This morning, the public view of this acronym list was not available. You are looking at the editor view of this, just so that I can show you what we're talking about. And the Explorer version of this, or the public version of this list, as we mentioned, was not available this morning, but we expect it back online anytime soon. So, are there any questions for folks? All you need is the URL in order to get into it. As I mentioned, the public one was not available as of last night and early this morning, but we expect it back online at any point.
This is,
So can you search for IBS?
Search for IBS. We'll see.
Yep, it is. And then also EAB. Yep.
So the way these are collected, right, Jill's on lots of calls and people throw acronyms and she's like, hey, what's that acronym mean? And then it goes in here, right? So at the Spring Summit, which was in the middle of April, you had just hit 600.
Correct.
And we're now at over 800.
Correct.
So in that span of 5 months, which I think is right, she's collected 200 more because our community is constantly throwing out acronyms. And I mean, as you saw, AWS is not specifically fire, but we use it in our language. So anyway, I just think those are interesting facts.
yeah, and I think, right now it's a pretty standalone list, and that it's just the acronym and what we understand is, what it's representing. But, eventually we'd like to be able to have this linked to, because there probably are acronyms in here that actually like you were just asking IBS. So, does that relate to an application? Does that relate to a glossary term? Does that relate to an NWCG standard or publication, or, a wildland fire policy or an OCIO policy, right? Like that's really the power of what Edge gives us, is that we can start enriching that data by linking and creating those relationships. And so, right now we're just collecting those and can eventually start building out some of those relationships so that it's a little bit richer.
And minor disclaimer, we have not connected it to the descriptions or the glossary just yet. Right now, any of the definitions you see in here are things that I have pulled offline or that were explained to me when I received the definitions of the acronym at the time. So could there be some minor modifications coming up soon? Yeah, probably. You can just about count on it. But beyond that, this will give you a good place to start, and I basically keep it open all the time. So whenever you guys are saying something new that I don't catch up on right off the bat, I'm immediately looking it up to see if it's in there, and if it's not, it gets added. And I may hit you up after the meeting or at a break and say, what did that mean? So you can help me out
So you had admins.
all the time.
Okay.
I've been admin this, we've been working on this meeting.
CMR.
It's in there.
Our Kotar.
It's in there. It may, excuse me, maybe not COTR, but COTS is in there, yeah.
That's contracting officer, technical representative.
It'll be,
It's the same as, it's the same as a COR, so how do you associate with it?
now, he's telling me it's something different than what you're saying a COR is.
So the COR is equal to COTR.
They're actually two different.
They're a contract
Yeah,
and
the two.
technical representative.
Yeah,
What does a COR mean?
Contracting officer.
that's contracting officer representative, which would be pretty much everybody, but a COTR would be a technical person overseeing like an IT contract. So they actually have, if you do training, COR trainings, they actually have ones for COTARs.
So check, but I
Slight
thought
difference.
there was a thing.
Yeah, slight differences. I know that program manager, it's another one, program manager and a program project manager,
Yeah,
thank
project
you.
manager.
I mix those two up all the
Yep.
time. We've got them in there both, but they're very similar. So you can see that even though I may have a description in there currently, it may not be the one you're thinking of. So if you've got an acronym that needs to go into this list that has a different description, send it my way. We'll get it in there. Okay? Are there any questions from anybody online or in the room regarding this particular collection?
I'm just getting a lot of kudos.
Yay. And so this one has all the FAM, Brad, this one has all the FAM acronyms that I started years ago. Plus, I've been adding any meeting I happen to be in, I'm throwing them up there. So if you guys have them for other reasons, send them my way, we have to add them in.
How about, well, you know, Dingle app, Dart chain from Dingle app, resource tracking.
Both are, Dart.
It's dynamic automating, so it's the same acronym, but different.
Oh, that's funny.
So I wonder if you like supersede it with the new one rather than making another
We
one.
can definitely put those messages
Yeah.
in there, and then I would also have it in there, whatever both definitions are. I'm looking to see what the definitions or descriptions are over here on the right,
Yeah.
with the one that has the little eye on it. For some reason, all of our duplicated ones split apart or clumped together again, so we'll have to work on that one. Maybe with the update. I'm
Oh,
not
I
sure.
wonder how I exported it.
Not sure. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay.
I was gonna say, yeah, that one's merged together. Those are two different things. So it's not,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
it's not.
had them separated out, Cole, and somewhere along the lines, when we were updating between versions, they clumped back together. So we'll get in there and get that fixed, and hopefully we'll have that stuck permanently that way.
Gotcha.
Probably doesn't happen very often when acronyms change, but being the same thing.
Well, and I wouldn't get rid of the old definition.
Yeah.
I'd leave it in there so that people have a cross-reference of what maybe it used to be and what now it's been superseded by.
Yeah, that's what's so
Preparedness
nice.
levels and planning levels, you know, there's
Yes.
another one
Yes.
where they changed.
They changed the piece.
They changed.
So anyway, this is open for you guys to help with me or help me with it, and at least for a little while, and we'll go from there and see what happens in the future with this. Michelle?
We do only have 26 letters in the English alphabet, so it's, you know, we get to reuse them in the same
Multiple times.
order again and again and again. Apparently, we're not very original, so we tend to use the same words for lots of different things.
Oh, and one other thing to keep in mind, if you guys are starting new projects or coming up with buzzwords to use for or new acronyms for your new projects, you might want to check the list to see that you're not overlapping with a project or with an acronym that's already been used, just to avoid confusion.
So the maintenance of the acronym list, obviously, Jill, you have that. Is that you're the steward of this list now, or is there a core group of people?
It's my personal pet peeve list, and they just asked me to put it into a collection. So right now, it's just me kind of adding things in and Gabriella giving me helpful scientific pointers. But someone will likely be helping out with that in the future, or they've even considered going more like a crowdsourcing opportunity where having everybody be able to add things into it. Not sure if a final decision has been made yet at this point.
Anyone else have a pet peeve about acronyms?
Yeah, I think, you know, at the end of the day, I'd really like to have this kind of be a wiki type thing because, you know, Jill's been phenomenal about that and she's very detail oriented, but, you know, it's a lot for one person to maintain and people are always looking for this stuff. And like in the chat, we were saying, you know, like as new people come in, I mean, it is overwhelming and, you know, you come from a different environment and we use the same acronym, but now it means something different. Or you get to learn things like WUI or poos. So we just are, I think this is like a super good start, right? And as just want to keep reminding people that it's available for reference and then continue to build it out because, man, it's tough sometimes to know what people are saying. Whole sentences and acronyms. Okay, so Skip, let's see, what time is it? That says,
We did our 15-minute break.
yeah, we're a little bit early, so yeah, let's take a 15-minute break and then we'll come back and have Skip share on the fuel stuff.